Hello and welcome to another Innovation Culture Coding live show. I'm really excited to do today's show because I have a good friend joining me. But before we go over and greeting our guest, welcome to the show. It's all about how do we work with innovation in different perspectives. And this show is built as a part of the ecosystem I'm doing, which is the Innovators Hub, where I want to feature independent coaches and consultants and give them a possibility to be authentically visible and getting you as the people who are watching or listening to it understanding how they work and how they deconstruct a case in a live environment. So this is not staged. We are just putting a case in front of the person who is joining me inside of this show, and then we go live exploring how they will uncover that case. My name is Jens Heitland, and I'm the host of this show. But let's bring in our guest. Aga, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so looking forward, and I was looking forward already the whole week because I know you have a lot of nuggets to share.
Thank you.
So, for everyone who is watching live, let us know where you are. Let us know in the comments. You are welcome to ask questions in between. I bring them up. And if you're interested when you watch this in recordings, go to the show page, which is on heitlandinnovation.com/innovation culture coding. There's a landing page where you will find everything from Aga over time. So we will bring in the links, the videos, the clips, the audio version of this, and as well a couple of interesting things. As an example, her book and the future books to come. So, Aga, before we go into the case, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, and what are you doing from a business perspective?
Mhm. So I'm a trained designer, interaction designer. I started doing this stuff when very few people in the world talked about it. So it was quite a long time ago. I try not to disclose how long time ago because it kind of makes people realize my age. So like as a woman, I'm trying to avoid that. I did my PhD at the Industrial Design Department at Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands on experience design. Then I moved to Poland, and by that fact, I sort of moved from academia to business. Started working with quite a number of companies in Poland and then in Europe on bringing the way of bringing design and also experience design onto their strategic agenda. And I've been doing all of this out of frustration, really, because I had a lot of conversations with people in the management boards talking about how they are excited about the whole idea of experience design and how you can make these things and how they are going to influence their business, and then nothing really happened. And I remember being really, really frustrated once and talking to one of the CEOs. And I said, like, my goodness, like, why can't you just already do it? Like, what the hell? And he looked at me and he said, like, Aga, you have to understand that I've been trained in leadership that taught me about finances, taught me about business, taught me about technology, like all the MBAs. This is what people are being educated in, but nobody taught me about experience or design for that matter. So like I simply don't know how to make all these things fit the company strategy. Like I'm excited, I want to do it, I just don't know how to bring it further within the organization. So after that comment, I kind of decided that instead of being frustrated about all of this, perhaps I should just put my butt down and write a book about it, as I did it with quite a number of organizations. So that led me to writing the book, which is called The Umami Strategy, Stand Out by Mixing Business with Experience Design. And it's a book that was written for business to get a way of thinking, also metrics, which is super important these days, to finally understand how they can incorporate something into their strategic way of thinking, which goes beyond the net promoter score, basically. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm working with startups and large corporations, helping them to go this one step further from the NPS in their way of thinking about experience or customer experience, how they call it often, although I'm not a fan of this particular expression. And I'm also a podcaster, like you, as you know, you've been a guest, which was like a super nice conversation. The podcast is called Catching the Next Wave, and we are approaching season 10. So yeah,
exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Yesterday we had a bonus episode released with Anthony Rocco and Pims Hatzhabel about their course on curiosity, but the fully blown season 10 is coming late October, early November, I guess.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Thank you.
So let's get into the case.
Yes.
There's somehow echo here. Let's see. I will just mute you when I read the case. I don't know why. We'll figure that out. Sorry?
Should I put my headphones? Would that help?
Yeah, that's definitely going to help. So for everyone who is watching live, that's what it is. It's live, and we're not cutting these things out because we always need to figure out how things work. So the case we have agreed to do today is a very interesting. So just reminding everyone what the theme of today is: innovate through differentiation, how to stand out in a market that is commoditized. And we have taken a very interesting approach, which is a case of a vegan meat producer, a company that's thriving right now. They're on top of their game, and the customers are buying. Investors line up to be part of and investing into that company. So the founding team looks already ahead. They're scaling. They don't want to lose their edge because they're very specific into what they're doing. I mean, it's vegan meat production, which is everyone knows that is like still early on. They're really where they want to be, but they want to scale. So they look into that, and then they say, how do we differentiate us further inside the different markets? It's a global company. So they have no idea how to do that, or some ideas, but not really. So they hire Aga to help them. So that's the case. Aga, how are you going about to start helping them?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think that I would absolutely love working with a company like this because I am a vegetarian. I don't eat meat for the last 11 years. And I'm very adamant about the fact that we should not abuse our power in basically, in the way we treat animals. So like this is something that resonates very deeply with me, which is a good thing and probably also a danger because I get very excited about these kind of cases.
Yeah.
And typically so the company like this is on a, like they probably kind of crossed the first threshold of starting up their business. So they've got the innovators. They probably already have early adopters who are using their product one way or the other. But then they are most likely facing something that is called the deep or the big chasm. So basically, you go from scaling from having a fairly well defined yet not very big market into going like scaling to get early majority to use your product, and then late majority and laggers eventually. So, and this is always a very interesting, very dangerous, and very strategically crucial point for any company, really.
Yeah.
So, for once, this is like you said in the description, they already have investors lining up, and probably they already have some funding. So these investors are expecting that they will grow very fast, very big.
Of course.
And this chasm is there. Like it's not gonna go away. There is this hole of, of getting people convinced to this new way of eating and living and all of this. The other thing is that as the company grows and scales, there's much more focus on today's business rather than on the future business. And then the third thing that is really dangerous and interesting as well is that typically these companies start with an innate purpose, I would say. So like, probably the founders came together, they most likely were vegans. They said, okay, like we want to make something that more people can eat, more people can enjoy this lifestyle. It should be tasty. It shouldn't be the stuff that many of us sometimes explored in early days of veganism across the world, which was not really the tastiest stuff you could imagine.
Yeah.
So basically, there is this vision. However, it's rarely very well explicated. And also there is probably a lot of intuitive thinking about how they differentiate on the market. But the question is whether this differentiation of today is going to survive the process of commoditization as new companies will jump the same wagon, right? So like basically if they are successful. So these are all the challenges that typically these companies face, often very unconsciously. So like they're not quite aware of these things potentially happening in their future. And we are deconstructing a fake case, so I might be very wrong about it, but I've seen it a number of times, so I kind of see that these things are happening.
Yeah. So how would you go about, so they're reaching out to you, like you agreed to help them, then you meet with them the first time. So how would that look like? What would you do to understand even the challenges you just mentioned, to get an understanding of what's true for them, what's really going on?
So typically what I do, I have a conversation where all my clients are laughing. I come with a major set of very difficult and inconvenient questions.
That's good.
So basically I typically ask, I ask where they are, how they prioritize, how they set their goals, what is their vision? Like, how do they want to grow? How big they want to grow? How do they want to create their culture? How do they want to develop their experience? And to many of these questions, they may not have the answers. So if they are not discouraged by this first meeting, which sometimes also happens, we typically plan a workshop, and I call it a visioning workshop. So basically we go into trying to understand where they are coming from and where they are heading. So basically what is I call it the hell and heaven. So basically what would be the heaven for them and what would be the hell for them, which is always super funny because the exercise is like you visualize your path from, like you visualize your today, so where you are today. Then you go to the past and you kind of visualize how you got to today. And then you create the state of hell and the state of heaven. And then you have to go from heaven to today and from hell to today. So suddenly they see how different decisions that they might be making on their way as we go forward or as they go forward influences where they eventually end up. And by the way, I would like to make a huge disclaimer. This is not my method. This is a method from a Complexity Institute called the Cognitive Edge. They have a lot of very interesting tools there. So this is one of those tools that I keep on using a lot.
Yeah. So you do this workshop. Who will be part of the workshop? Is it only the founders or is it more people?
Typically, I try to ask. I don't do it with the founders. I think that it's important to have people who are the core people on their team at that point. So basically, and it's important for two reasons. One is that the founders often are, founders are often optimists. So they don't have a very right. So like they have a slightly optimistic perspective of how the future might unfold. So I'd rather have a few people who have their hands, like dirty up to here, and then they basically say like, no, yeah, yes, but, and they kind of bring a little bit more realism to certain situations, especially when the company has some technology. It's good to have someone from the side of technology, because they can create a beautiful help for the company. But also, like, if there is a person who is responsible for promotions, for example, like with like you yourself very well know, creating a sales funnel and creating a successful sales funnel is a hell lot of work, and a lot of companies are not that good at it. Myself included, by the way. I'm guilty as charged.
Ask me. That's something you don't learn in the corporate world, at least not in my world.
True. Yes. Oh, neither in mine. not that I'm in the corporate world, but I work with corporate world. So basically, like you kind of don't get that lesson. You get a lot of different lessons there, but not that one. Anyway, so basically, I bring these people, and it's not a very big team. It's usually up to 10, 12 people is the most. And what I typically do is, like, I start in the evening. So it's not a day workshop, it's an evening workshop. So basically we meet for that workshop. We have 3 hours of a conversation where I leave it at the point when I kind of open them up. They start having a discussion. Often afterwards we go for like wine or beer or food, and then we continue the discussion. But I want them to simmer a little bit in their thinking before I bring them into the next day, where we start talking about their strategy. So that's a bit of a trick that I do there. And then we and this is also a pattern that I've seen happening with startups. Is like we have usually 3-4 day workshop, like strategic workshop, where we go through the vision. Then we define how they would like to differentiate on the market. I'll go into it in a second. Then I typically do an exercise with them, which can take, like, I have to limit it, because I think that if I allowed, it would take days, if not weeks. And this is basically called, the exercise is called the dilemma. I took it from urbanism, so basically design of urban spaces, which is quite popular there, but not in the business world. But basically the idea is that you say, okay, so you have your vision and you have your differentiators. I call them edges. So like, like you bet on something that you're going to be like this, but not like that. And then you have to make choices. So like, like when you have a vision and you have these things, it means that you cannot be everything. You, like in Poland, we call it, I'm always laughing that there's quite a few companies that say that they are traditionally modern. You're either traditional or modern. You can be traditional with elements of modernism in it, but you cannot be traditionally modern. It's like it's kind of saying like I'm a nobody, like I'm nothing really, like I can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
So basically, so basically what I ask them is to come up with different, I call them dilemmas, but basically it's like different decisions, strategic decisions that they have to take. Are we a premium product, or are we a basic product? Are we for all the markets, or are we for certain markets? Are we advertising to B2B, to business? Are we advertising B2C, so to customers? Are we based on promotions, or are we based on premium price? Like are we one product? Are we multiple products? Are we technology based, or are we brand based, or whatever? Like they are really good at creating these dilemmas, actually. So like it's not very difficult to get this. So I typically I ask them to vote for 10, 12 most important ones. And then what I basically do is like I ask them, okay, now individually, like I have this group of 9 to 12 people, individually say where you think you are. Like you've got the one side of the scale and the other side of the scale, and there's like a line there. And I ask them, okay, like put a mark where you think you should be, because it's never black and white, right? It's So basically, what is happening is that they individually mark where they are on all those dilemmas, and then they bring it together to the main to one sheet of paper, And then we start the discussion.
Hmm.
So basically, everyone explains why they think they put their mark in this point. And the bottom line is that they have to arrive at an agreement where they are on that scale. And how does that relate to their vision and their differentiators? And whether they are not breaking what they idealized in their vision and in their differentiators. And then when we have this, it's a moment to go into measurements. So basically, like they create some success metrics, which they can then operationalize in their daily work. So this is typically the workshop that happens there.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that what I've noticed with some of my startup clients is that they come to me, we do it once, and usually they kind of take it and live with it for some time, and they come back to me again to redo it after half a year or a few months, because they realize that they need better precision there. And then typically it's also very interesting when I'm negotiating the first workshop and I tell them that it's going to be like 3 days, they go like, no, we don't have 3 days. We're far too busy to give you 3 days. So like we have very, very intense negotiation there. But then when they come the next time, they easily have 5 days for me.
Yeah, so it's like, no, can we do a week longer?
Yes, exactly.
So you, just to get back for everyone who is joining or has joined after we have started. So we're deconstructing a case of a vegan meat producing company, which is on the right. It's like on the rise, and they have a lot of customers. They have investors lined up, and the founders want to scale. They want to scale, but not losing their edge. And of course, they look into differentiation, and Aga is helping them. So what we looked into is, you start with meeting with the founding team, asking a lot of, as you said, difficult questions, to give them an understanding of where they are, but as well you understand where they are and where they want to be, and really going into that. Then you do a workshop with which can be like 3 to 4 days with about 12 people. Not the founding team. It's more people who are hands-on, who are different parts of the business and understand of what's going on, where you go then really into details. So after you do this vision workshop, what is the outcome of the vision workshop, and how do you take the outcome to the next level?
Mm-hmm. So typically the outcome of the workshop, there are like several outcomes. So one is that they better understand who their aspirational customer is. So like, who do they want their customers to aspire to? Which is a very interesting concept, in a sense that, like we all want to be, a better version of ourselves. Yeah. But every company can build a specific better version of us. So, you can, for example, with vegan meat, you can tap into climate change, you can tap into sustainability, you can tap into animal love, you can tap into balance in the world. Like there is a number of things, but you need to understand what you are tapping into. And your assumption is that if you tap into a few of these things that are super inspirational, a lot of people will want to follow it eventually. Yeah. So this is one thing. So they get an understanding. They have to do research about it always afterwards. So I'm sort of jumping forward here, but basically they kind of at least get a picture of who these people can be. Then we end up with a vision, which I typically call a manifesto. So basically you create a manifesto that you say, okay, like we believe in something, therefore we commit ourselves to do something in order to. Yeah. So you basically you make a promise to the world of who you are and why you're doing what you are doing, which is an interesting thing because, like I said, often the startups, they don't have it explicated. So it takes some time to actually pull it out from the founders to get this really precise, so they are happy about it. But at the same time, they love to see that it's being written finally, like they've always talked about it, but now it's on paper, so they can sort of start sharing it with other people. Then the next thing is that they come up with their edges. So they choose 2, 3. I'm trying not to allow for more, but sometimes the biggest I end up with was 6 differentiators. So they say, okay, like we are going to do it in a certain way. So basically it says that, okay, we are going to be, our product will be, or our approach to the customer, our experience that we offer will be conscious. Like we help people to understand at each step of the way what change they are making to the world, for example. Or they can say we are going to be the tastiest. And so basically they say, okay, like we are going, apart from the fact that we create this vegan meat, we are going to always keep an eye on having the taste that's just mind-blowingly awesome. It doesn't have to resemble meat. Like that could be a very interesting, that could be a very interesting dilemma for them. Does it have to resemble meat, or doesn't it have to resemble meat? I would ask that dilemma from them. And then we go into the dilemmas. So basically I'm asking them to start making choices. And from those choices, we create metrics. So basically they have some tools. Usually they are not super advanced, but they have some metrics that they can measure their success by. And that's the end of the workshop, really.
That's awesome. So you do this. What is the next step? So you have the customer aspiration. What is the future customer perspective? The vision manifesto, the edges, and the metrics. How do they take it to the next level, and what is your role as being part of that? I guess for the workshop, you're facilitating it. You're helping them to go through all these different steps. So what do they need to do, and what are you doing with them?
Okay, so there are like 2 paths typically that happen with me. Like usually, like one way is that they pull me a little bit more, and I'm helping them setting up the experiential agenda. So this is one way to go about it. The other is that they ask me to stay as an advisor, or like mentor for doing certain things. But regardless of these 2 roles, the next step for the team is to take all the brilliant ideas that they have, and usually they have tens, if not hundreds, of awesome ideas, and they don't know how to prioritize them. And they basically use the metrics that we've created, some of them being business metrics, some of them being experiential metrics, in order to prioritize what are the next things that they are going to do. And usually what we do is, it's super simple. It's a Moscow method. So like, must have, should have, can have, we shouldn't do this. I add an extra thing to it, which is coming up with moonshots. So basically the traditional Moscow allows you to plan the things that you're going to do within the defined time span, right? And what I want them to keep on thinking is not only how they differentiate today, but how can they differentiate in the future when this competition grows bigger, and how they can, just thrive on the market rather than, be running after the competition and fall into a trap of commoditization. So basically we have this one thing, and usually when we do this, and they usually have a lot of ideas, and I must say that the prioritization process is very painful, because they have to cut a lot of very, 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 very inspirational ideas. So I'm allowing for 1 moonshot, sometimes 2, but no more. And then we basically get all the must-haves. We plan them, like we evaluate them, see what kind of impact they are bringing. So based on the impact, we say, okay, like which one is the first one, second, third, and so on. So basically we order them, rank order them. Then if there is any space, usually there isn't, but if there is any, we rank order the shoots, and the rest goes as a, like kind of a wishful thinking list for the future, eventually maybe, if the time allows and the market allows as well. So this is the first thing. And then usually, like they have a lot of amazing people on board. So these people take project number one, let's say being reorganizing their funnel. So I am not going to help with that. Like I said, I have very little knowledge, but typically this is also the moment when they say, okay, like we want to build our, we want to focus on our experience. So we want to try to understand how experiential we are in our business. And I'm saying this because I very strongly believe that experientialism and thinking about experiences is the way to differentiate yourself over time. Yeah. So basically, of course, you can, like, your product will be awesome, but at the end, when people have a great product and a great experience around the product, purchasing, using, you name it, this is what makes them emotionally connected to your brand and staying with you. So usually I kind of leave the overall organization to their own devices, and I just move to this part of building experience. Yeah. And usually what we do, there are like two major steps that need to be done. One is to understand their path. I call it experience backbone. I am not a big fan of the expression customer journey, because customer journey implicates that there is like a line, like that there is something you go through and this is very linear. I don't think that this is the case very often. Very often it's more like a circular thing, like you go back and forth, you check things, you return, you compare, you do a lot of things before you kind of make a choice. Or you do very few things because it's like a spontaneous purchase, and then there's no line. There's like just a point. Yeah. Anyway, so basically I'm trying to understand that, and I'm trying to understand it from this perspective of experience. So when they chose their differentiators, and I'm talking about emotional differentiators, they can be pragmatic differentiators as well, but I'm very much focusing on the emotional differentiators. I'm trying to see to what extent they actually evoke those emotions in people. And there is, it's usually like a long list of things that they can do and improve on their experience. Yeah. So this is always very nice, because these kind of startups, they do build a great experience. It's just that, it opens up more possibilities for exploring and designing for it. And then the second part that I do is I ask them to investigate their aspirational customers. So and I believe very strongly, I'm not a big fan of personas, to be perfectly honest, because for me personas are very reductionist. So they create this very limited picture of people who are your customer. Yeah. Often personas are not very inspirational either, because they talk about us here and now. So I might be thinking about what I have to do next, and that I have to work and I have to do this project and so on. It doesn't really help you to design anything cool. But if you think about Aga, who wants to be fully vegan and who wants to live full life, which is healthy, and all these kind of things, suddenly there's so many things that you can tap into and create, both communication-wise and brand-wise and product-wise and experience-wise, that basically this opens up the whole space for innovation, and also makes the team look beyond today. Because this is the trap that a lot of companies fall into, and these are like startups, corporates, and any company really, is that the money is in the early majority, late majority, and laggers, right? This is your biggest financial market. So companies tend to serve these people, but they are not bringing this aspiration into the picture. Yeah. So having the aspirational archetypes as a way to stay alert to how the people who are ahead of time, ahead of curve, are thinking, helps you to stay ahead yourself. And the awesome thing with archetypes is that they are not exclusive. So like personas are exclusive. Like you are either this person or this person or that person, right? Exactly. And with archetypes, you can be, you are 100% Jens, but you can be 50% animal lover and 20% sustainability focus and 30% health oriented, right? So basically you suddenly get things, get information and inspiration that makes people, enriches people and people's perspective on themselves rather than limits that like personas do.
Yeah. So I love these 2 steps. How do you help them in doing that?
Again, we have to make a few assumptions here. So first of all, the big question is like, do they have a researcher on board? Often not really, because the initial idea was a hunch from the founders, and it was a lucky hunch because the company is thriving. So typically there isn't a person who can run this research. So like while I'm trying to convince the founders to actually get a person like this on board, because you need to have a better understanding of the market and people and experiences and all of that. I'm basically trying to help them a good partner, like the research partner, like a research agency that is going to run the study for them. However, what I'm doing usually is, as at that point, I kind of start understanding their business a little bit better, because like when I come, I'm green as a spring flower. But then like as I get into the topic, I kind of assume a role of a person who helps setting up these studies. So like I'm kind of their advocate and their voice for the agency that they are working with.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to keep an eye on how this project is going, and like just trying to get the best outcome possible from that.
Yeah. So if I understand you right, you literally help them to dig into the path, like understanding that path, which you don't call customer journey. So understanding all the different touch points, all the different possibilities to connect to their aspirational customers, or all customers, all potential customers. And of course, because they might not have a specific person who is capable of doing that right now, you help them as well find the right partners. And then it's kind of, if I understand you right, you're kind of the middleman between the person who has the knowledge, like the external partner, and the startup or the corporate, where you help to make sure that the research and the knowledge they gain, the insights they gain doing that fits to the company needs, if I understand you right.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So then they get this insights. How do you work with the company going forward, understanding what are the different perspectives?
So step one is that we validate whether their assumptions that we did in the strategic workshop are still valid. And often they are not invalid, but they need to be either reframed or enriched. So basically, there is the lucky hunch was a lucky hunch, but now it has more depth into it. So basically, what we do, we have another workshop. And again, this is like if there is a researcher already on board, the researcher joins in, or an experienced designer joins in as the people who are going to carry this work within the organization. And basically, we revisit everything that has been discussed in the strategic workshop and say, okay, like now that we have this body of knowledge, would we change, or would we? It's not really. Sometimes it's changing. So like the edges, the differentiators can change because they thought something, and it turns out that for their customers something else is much more important. This happens. Usually with their archetypes, they or these aspirational customers, they get more depth. Like they don't really change as much. Maybe there's a new one added. Like there's some group of people who weren't, or some qualities that weren't really thought by them, which end up in this in the mix. And usually we go into the vision and we look at it and say, okay, like knowing all of this, would we add something to this? So like, would we make it richer, bigger, bolder, maybe even? And after we do this, sometimes we go back into the dilemmas, which is the painful process for them, because like usually they are like few months ahead, and the situation changed, the company changed, the startup changes, like it's a different company in 3 or 4 or 5 months, right? So basically, you have to revisit this, and usually it's a little bit of a painful process, because along the way they took some decisions that were maybe not necessarily in agreement with what they assumed at the beginning. But once we do this, what I'm helping them to do is to create a way to validate their experiential differentiators. So we create a tool of a sort. You can think about it like a questionnaire or a visual tool that basically helps them validate along the way, with every touch point, with everything that they do, whether they are building on those differentiators, or are they abandoning them, or are they hurting them, which also happens sometimes, right? You do something like, traditionally modern, you do something modern, you hurt traditional, you do something traditional, you hurt the modern part of it. So basically the idea is that what I'm saying typically is that if you want to truly differentiate and be radically different from your competition, which is the goal, you need to keep on adding on the top of this differentiation points. Otherwise, people are not going to talk about you, and you're not going to get the word of mouth you want. You're not going to get the organic growth you want, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So once we do this, and we are in agreement that they are still kind of willing to work with me, we get the list of experiential projects. And we basically take the one which is the biggest bang for the bank, basically. So we try to get something like, for example, you can have a part of the backbone, experience backbone, that's like was completely abandoned. Like, like they didn't think about it, and something needs to be done there. So like, the customers have a feeling that they are being taken care of, or you realize what are, like, one thing that definitely happens is that you realize what are the peak moments for customers. So like I follow with the peak end model of Daniel Kahneman. So basically we say, okay, like, should we work on peak and just make it more explicit and more elaborate and more outstanding? Can we do something about the end if the journey has multiple parts? Because sometimes you can clearly differentiate between like pre-purchase and post-purchase and afterwards, sort of, there are different ways to look at it. We say, okay, like, should we look for the peak moments for each part of the journey, and how can we enhance that? And this how the operational thing starts. So like we start working on projects, and usually so like working on experience is not the job of a department, or it's not a process or anything of that kind. It's more a way of thinking. It's like a mindset for the organization. So what I'm trying to do is, on the one hand, get people as much involved in these projects. So like, it's not done by one team and closed in a separate room, nobody enters. Or doing this just with funders, so you have the shadow of power on you, and therefore everybody has to listen to you. No, that's not my way. What I do is I'm trying to start inviting people from the different parts of the organization to join in, which is sometimes really funny because they don't understand how designers work. And for example, they expect a final concept after a 5-day sprint or something like this. So there's a lot of education happening as well. But the second thing that I do is I'm trying to get as many people who are interested in this way of thinking to train with the team. I'm at that point, I assume that there is at least one experienced designer on board. So basically what we are trying to do, we are trying to get design thinking school, that so people can actually use this way of thinking within their teams, and then the tiny experienced team that is there does the projects that are cross-departmental, or they are like they just require their work and effort.
Yeah, what I really like about that, the way you work, is you might start initially as a consultant, as an advisor, facilitator of things, but in the end it's like you educate people on the way, you create mindset, and all of that will go into the company culture, because the
Yes,
people
that's
will
true.
understand how do we work together. It's different perspectives of the different people inside of that. They think about the customer in different ways because they understand their vision in a different way. So it's quite interesting that you kind of have built a system to bring all of that together, um, and in the end you take yourself out of it. So it's not
Yeah,
that you make them dependent on you, which you could easily do as a consultant. It's like, yeah, sorry, I only have the knowledge. I can help you, but you have to pay me. So you are kind of empowering them to take over, so that you make yourself abundant. That they don't need you anymore in the best case.
yeah. Yeah. So actually, this is like, I love that you said that, because my mantra is that as a consultant, I want to make myself scarce as soon as possible.
Yeah.
This is for me my success measure. So like, if the company needs me forever, it's a bad sign. I didn't do my job well. But there's a problem, because people get kind of used to just, like, it's like you have someone who knows a bit more from you, and then you kind of keep on turning to them and you don't want to let them go.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, one of the difficult moments in this collaboration is when I am trying to really get myself scarce and not necessarily disappear, because if I'm looking at my clients, I have a very longitudinal relationship with them. When they may not talk to me for 2 years, and they call me, say like, Aga, we have this thing, and please come and help us set up a study, think differently, run a workshop, run a sprint, whatever. Or they just call me and ask me questions, or I mentor them for some time. However, getting myself out of this of the company sometimes is it requires a lot of delicacy, I would say, and subtlety, and the building in the people within the company the understanding and the true belief that they are able to do this stuff without me.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating, because that's also truly empowering them. But I see your point. It might be hard, because in the end they're paying you, and if, like you said, I at least in my experience, it's like you grow together with them in the same way. Like, the people, you like them, hopefully at least. So you have
If I don't
fun.
like them, I'm not there.
Oh yeah, true. But
Yeah.
you have fun with them, working with them. But in the end, you need to, like, give them space to grow. As long as you're there, they will not take over.
Yeah. Like, I see it very much like a parent sees a child. Like, you kind of nurture the child, but at some point the child has to become independent from you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are just overprotective mother, and that's not a very good thing. Actually, there's a very controversial book which is called Against Empathy by Paul Bloom. That got me. I read it with a lot of yellow light in my head, but actually it got me thinking about it, because what he says is that empathy is very immediate. So basically, you have people who have a problem now, and you try to help them now, often without thinking about the long-term consequences of that help. Yeah. So basically, again, I'll use the example of a child. If you have a child who doesn't want to do homework and wants to go play, the empathetic thing would be to let it go play. It's like, oh, okay, like, you do the homework later or whatever, right? But as a parent, you know that the homework is important because it's their future. And of course, the physical activity is also their future, but it has to be in balance. So for me, I realized that often when I'm working with the clients, and I am an empathetic person, because this is part of my job. I'm a designer and a researcher, so it's like, I kind of have this oversensitivity in me, very well developed, sometimes too well. And at some point, I really need to shut down on empathy for the client and think about it more like a parent thinking. Okay, like, they really need to go and do this project without me, and even if they stumble, they will learn from it much more than if I was holding their hand and telling them, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, like, do this, do that. So It's difficult, to be perfectly honest, but I'm getting better at it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Awesome. I could talk like at least 5 hours more and learn from I have like 2 pages of notes and have
Wow.
learned a lot. So one of the questions I always ask close to the end is, can you please describe your dream client? So your aspirational client, who would that be?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have part of it clarified, part of it not necessarily, or maybe it changes and evolve as I change and evolve.
Huh.
So I definitely love working with clients who are about something that goes beyond earning, getting financial gain. I love clients who like this, hypothetical example that we had. They actually have a way to change the world, but it's not like we are going to change the world sort of situation that we've heard so many times in the past decade or 2 decades, coming from a lot of startups. But it's more like, okay, we have a product that truly influences one concrete aspect of the world, and we want to make a dent there. And I love working with I love working with young companies, and like companies that are they may already scaled up, but they say, okay, like we really want to kind of have another look at who we are and how we can do things in a new way. So this is definitely something that is important for me. Like I just need to like the people. It's
It's
such a,
super
on the
important.
one hand, yeah, and like it kind of feels almost unprofessional because you say, okay, like you're a professional coming, like you're a consultant coming, like buckle up and just don't think about these things. But I basically think that if there is a chemistry going on between me and the client, we go much further, and it's just so much better collaboration for me and for them. So this is super important for me, and I just definitely am looking and think about clients and work with clients who are convinced that experience and experientialism is the thing that is going to make them differentiate on the market. Like if this is something that they don't really believe in, this is my expertise. So like, they're not just, they can get some stuff from me. Like I can run a workshop for them, of course, and they will get their strategy and their prioritization, their vision better defined. But this would be the extent to which I can help them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love creating experience and I love to help with transformation for leaders and for their teams. So I absolutely love when a team comes to me and they say like, okay, like we want to be their team. And usually these are the design teams. So, like, I would never dare to talk to like sales team or IT team or anything like this. But with design teams, I think that I love working with teams and making them just work well with each other. So this is something that also makes me tick.
Yeah, love that. Aga, was a pleasure to have you on the live show. So for everyone who is interested in more of what Aga is doing, you will find within the next couple of days more about Aga on the show notes, more about what she's doing. Of course, the recording of this show, you will find more clips out of this show in the short version. You will find the audio version in the future there, and her books and a lot of other things. So go to heitlandinnovation.com/innovation culture coding. Aga, thank you very much for the live show. It was a pleasure having you, and really enjoy this live show. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was so much fun, and I love the case. And like it makes me understand myself and my process better. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm just asking the questions.
That's often what it takes. You're asking difficult questions.
Yeah. Super. So for everyone who is watching, next Tuesday is the next Innovation Culture Coding Live. Join us. I will post it latest on Monday. So see you next Tuesday or in any of the recordings and other live shows. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Thank you.